Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am Kim Riley. I am the founder of the Transition Academy, Special Needs College and Career Planning Center. And this is the second week of Tuesday Talks. Tuesday Talks is designed to unite the disability community during COVID-19 and beyond. And before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. If you are not speaking, if you could mute your call, just hover right over your screen, and you can mute that. And if you can, I'll do it for you. It's no big deal. And we'll go right ahead and get started here. And let's see. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick. So as you know, last week we launched Tuesday Talks, a weekly forum for families, for schools, for community partners who are working in Kansas City with our disabilities community to meet, to lean on and learn from one another. And we have two sessions, a morning session at 10 a.m. and then an evening session at 6 p.m. And we follow a pretty simple agenda. First 30 minutes we devote to a 20-minute presentation and then 10 minutes of Q&A. And then the last half of the meeting we devote to resource sharing. And I am really excited about this week's speaker and this week's topic. Our speaker today is Miss Andi Bonge. Andi is an occupational therapist, has been for more than 20 years, and her timely topic is how to manage challenging behaviors at home during quarantine. This is the first of a two-part series, and I will tell you more about part two later, but in the meantime, I'm going to pass the mic to Andi. Welcome, Andi.
Thank you guys for having me. Super, I feel very privileged to be allowed to come in and talk with you guys. I have learned most of what I know, not from the degrees that I have, but from the parents and the children with whom I've worked, and a lot of the really talented professionals that I've had the gift to work with also over the years. So this is really a compilation of everything that I have learned from both working in school districts and also alternate placement behavioral settings. Challenging behaviors. If I could go talk about like what is kind of the encapsulating thing for managing them, I'll go to the second sheet on my, the second page on the presentation. The more a body system struggles to regulate itself, the more important a well-regulated environment becomes. So a lot of our loved ones have challenges with modulating sensory information coming in, accessing language to be able to express themselves in their various states, and then motor planning challenges, which can double the difficulty that they have in responding to environmental demands in a timely fashion. So keeping the environment very predictable is going to help a lot, manage a lot of your issues. So I've kind of got a 5 simple step things. Thank you, Kim. The first one is communication. Making sure that your communication system is in place and is working, whatever that may be. Number 2 is schedule, and schedules vary per the family needs, how structured the family is versus not being very structured at all. There's always a way that you can use some type of schedule to let your loved one know what types of events are coming up during the day. Movement and sensory stimulation, I never separate those two. To me, those two are one and the same. So planning for frequent movement and sensory breaks that are that do not include any other thinking kind of challenges, just times that they can decompress are important. Sleep and nutrition. Most of our kids struggle with some aspect of this, whether they're picky eaters or they have kind of unpredictable sleep patterns, and that can really contribute to their ability to regulate themselves the next day. And then number 5 is having a contingency plan in place for when challenging behaviors escalate to become unsafe behaviors. There has to be a plan in place that all of the individuals in your family know about and can use in order to bring things back to a calm state. So the first one is communication. And, you know, I know a lot of families that don't use the communication system that their speech therapist or their school district may have put in place for their child. Because on most occasions, you know, the child knows what to expect. They read their parents' expectations very well. But when everybody's trying to live and work in a small environment, and especially when everybody's out of routine, the communication system becomes more important. So even if, let's say, like you have Proliquo or something like that, that can kind of be challenging if you're not used to getting in and out of windows. Figuring out a couple times a day that are very low challenge, like maybe making a choice for breakfast in the morning and making a choice for a leisure activity in the afternoon, giving that opportunity to practice a couple times a day with the communication system in place will allow you and your loved one to kind of know how to work with each other on that, understand each other's rhythms with that, so that then should you come to a more difficult part of the day, you could bring that communication system back out again to see if you can help them express what their needs are. I'm going to try to lift this up. So communication systems, if the Proliquo or whatever your system is just too complex, it can be very simple picture systems that you can use. I even use sticky notes a lot. Just draw little stick figures with maybe one word on to describe. That can be very effective, well, especially if you're coming to a meltdown situation, but you don't have the communication system in place. Also, making verbal transition cues simple and repetitive. For example, if you are transitioning from a leisure screen time activity to a work time activity, that can be very challenging. So if you have in place, anytime you transition, you say, break time is finished, time to check the schedule. Now it's time to go work at the computer with reading or whatever. If you can use those simple verbal cues consistently throughout the day, that can really help de-escalate meltdowns to transitions. When you get into a period of time when you're approaching a crisis, behaviors are starting to escalate, reducing the visual and auditory stimuli that you're giving to the child. So having a very calm, almost flat affect, yet attentive, you know, reading their cues and just responding very simply with limited verbal communication, just like, I understand you're upset, but it's time to check the schedule. Break time is finished. Now it's time to go reading or go to reading. And it can almost sound like you're a broken record, but by reducing the amount of input you're trying to give to the individual, you're actually reducing environmental stress, and they may be able to get their equilibrium back. Scheduling is so important, and I personally do not run a highly structured household, which has been not always a positive thing for my parenting. But if you have some kind of routine in place, what the schedule does is it is kind of a contract that all the individuals have in the household, that things are going to happen in a certain predictable manner. So the schedule form and the amount of rigidity in it is highly dependent on the family and what your individual needs. So for example, again, sticky notes are really nice. Even if you're just trying to schedule a work period at the desk, you know, having little sticky notes that just have stick figures with maybe one word like read, math, IXL, break. Those kind of things really help the individual plan how much effort and cognitive ability they're going to have to put out before they get to have a break. It gives them something to work for. Maybe you guys are somebody that likes to just kind of make a list and cross things off, and that is fine too. Some families need to put time limits. Other families just like to have kind of a rough sequence that's broken up by meal periods. So whatever you guys need is fine, but just to have something that everybody can go back to. Because when you get into, like, especially if you have an individual that has some oppositional issues, that kind of takes the power struggle out, right? Like, so you're not the one who's coming in and making them stop their preferred activity. The schedule says it's time for us to do that. And a lot of times that can really help. Alternate periods of focused work and learning with rote movement or sensory stimulation activities. So for example, if math is really super hard, you're going to want to keep your math period pretty short, and then have periods of just kind of like maybe a preferred STEM activity where they don't have to do anything, but they can just sit and stim on the materials. Large muscle movement also is really important for both AM and the PM. And ideally that would be just very road activities like walking, jumping on the trampoline, nothing where they're really having to coordinate any movement. Usually it's recommended that there's no large muscle movement after 8, because that can kind of interfere with the body's trying to cycle down for sleep. Another thing is screens. I think most of our kids are getting more screen time than normal right now. So if this is the case for you, then you're going to want to go into, if you haven't already, go into your settings, into your screen, and make sure the blue light filter is turned on. I know my phone has a blue light filter, and I just checked in my kids' MacBooks today, and I did not find a blue light filter in that. But the blue light is really stimulatory at the brainstem region and can interfere with the release of sleep hormone at night. And so it can throw off sleep schedules, especially if they're getting too much during the day or too much late at night. So usually try to have it off a couple hours before they try to sleep. Again, making transitions with the highly predictable verbal cues. Okay, break time is finished. It's time to check the schedule. Now it's time to blank, go do this. If you do that very predictably with the same kind of inflection, like a lot of our kids like to mimic their favorite videos because the inflection and the music and stuff is always the same. It's highly repetitive. Your voice can become that same type of thing in your environment. Always when you're making a schedule, have a little piece of paper off to the side that has a big star on it, and you can write on their special activity. If something should happen unforeseen that's going to throw off the predictability of the schedule, you can put the special event card. Use your voice inflection. Oh, guys, look, it's time to check the schedule. We have a special activity. Here's what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And tell them, you know, we're going to go and we have to run to the store and pick up such and such because we don't have it for dinner. And then just move on with your schedule. When you get back from that special activity, just jump back into where your schedule was previously. Okay, here's movement and sensory. So large muscle movement is really crucial for helping to burn off stress hormones. It allows the brain and the body to kind of stay working together, and also promotes neurotransmitter production and keeps the individual grounded in the present. So if you're having, most of us know, like if you've woken up from a really deep sleep, it's sometimes very hard to jump into and the same thing is for our individuals a lot of the time. Okay, sensory experience. That's okay. Let me go back to a couple things with large movement.
Absolutely.
Okay, so The thing about children with autism spectrum, especially if they have motor planning abilities, which kids who have um, kids who have more behavioral issues typically have motor planning issues, and the act of motor planning itself can actually trigger behaviors. So making movement that they do not have to think about, does not require coordination or working with someone else, just walking out in nature, running, jumping on a trampoline, pushing or pulling a sibling in a wagon. If they're skilled, riding a bike can be like that, or riding a push scooter. Those are really good things. If you have a movement seeker, you know, one of those kids that's moving all the time, actually what their system, they're not just craving movement, they're actually craving integration of all their systems. So this would be a perfect time to teach your sensory seeker how to do more skilled movement. So teaching them how to do roller skating, if it's on a four-wheeled skate, teaching them how to do a two-wheeled push scooter, so they're having to work some balance. I'm trying to think of riding a bike, putting some training wheels on a bike, and you can get some actually really nice larger training wheels for bigger kids on Amazon. You can just go on a regular bike, so you don't have to order anything expensive. Now would be a perfect time to teach some of those more integrative motor activities. Yoga, ball play, and stuff like that are good if you have if again, like, they don't have to work too hard. So you might want to start just really easily with just doing some deep breathing. Okay, ready for the next one. Okay, so sensory time is also important. I really like to think of it as more of a downtime. You can work structured language activities or fine motor activities into that. If there's something especially that your individual does not like to do, you can kind of hide it, you know, kind of sugar up the pill a little bit, I guess. But if they're doing other academic activities or they're helping with chores at home, it might just be really nice for them to have sometimes with a little bean and rice spin, or there's all sorts of recipes online for different, like one of the cool recipes I found the other day was using 8 cups of flour to 1 cup of mineral oil, and it makes kind of like a moon sand, but way cheaper than actual moon sand. And it's a very cool and smells nice, kind of babyish, so that would be calming too. You can store the materials in the bag and switch them out. So those like aluminum cake pans that are disposable are really cheap and nice places to make sensory bins out of. If your child or a loved one enjoys a bath, make that part of their daily routine. Throw a little couple cups of Epsom salt in there for the magnesium. The magnesium is absorbed into the bloodstream and is calming to the nervous system. A little bit of lavender essential oil. There is lots of research about how real lavender oil impacts the nervous system. It goes up through the olfactory nerve and into the brain. Is very calming also. And there's no need to put it off till at night, especially if you need something like that for calming during the day. Do not push activities that you know will cause upset, as most of us probably are instinctively staying away from at this time. You would not want this time to help to try to get your child over their aversion to glue on their fingers. If you have a movement seeking loved one, again, now's the time to try to work on some developmental activities that will help them integrate their system better. Okay, good sleep and nutrition. I could do a whole presentation on this. Most of our kids, especially with more dysregulated behaviors, have poor sleep and nutrition. And those two things, well, those three things actually go together hand in hand. So a lot of the kids have poor nutrition, super picky eating. It's no fault of the parent, but there are some things that you can do to kind of help. Most of our kids are magnesium deficient. Most kids in the United States are, and especially if your child is symptomatic and shows anxiety or nervousness, that can be a sign. Your doctor can easily do a test for that. But again, putting 2 cups in the bath for 20 minutes is really nice. Also, if you have a kid that's not a protein eater, a lot of times that is due to a zinc deficiency. So zinc deficiencies can really cause some abnormal taste and sensory things in the tongue. So trying to get more nutrition into like a smoothie or a milkshake, any way you can help. So there's collagen proteins that have a full profile of amino acids that you can slip into foods, like even mashed potatoes and stuff. See if there's infant mineral drops that you can put into smoothies and stuff. Magnesium B vitamins are really important for neurotransmitter generation, and they also I say a lot. I'm super sorry. Trying to go fast. Those enzyme processes are really important for cellular detoxification and making sure the cell walls are opening up and letting the right amounts of nutrients and enzymes in. So that's why nutrition is so important and can really impact how the nervous system is functioning. Nutritional changes are best implemented gradually over time. I probably don't need to tell any of you guys that, but if you're looking to make some dietary change, just try, by changing the cereal or trying to change a different kind of milk or putting some collagen powder into a smoothie, something that your kid already enjoys, and just a little bit over time so they don't notice a huge taste difference. Your contingency plan. This is important. So everybody in the family needs to understand that everybody in the family has to have safe behavior, because we're all living and working and playing and trying to be happy in the same space. And if we're unsafe, then people can't do that. So every family has to kind of figure out, how are we going to handle it if someone becomes unsafe? And so you can initiate a conversation like that by kind of using the social story thing. And I'm wondering, did I miss that part? I think I might have. And I'll talk about that right now. So like social stories, which were first conceived by Carol Gray, are a way, they're magical. They're absolutely magical to diffuse a situation or make something understandable. And there's a certain very predictable and simple way that you write them. And I have a couple resources at the end where you can go and look at that. But explaining that would be, if I have unsafe behavior at day program or at school, I, typically, and reach out to the teacher, what do you guys do typically if there's unsafe behavior? What's your behavior plan at school? And then you can kind of try to mock that up at home. If I have unsafe behavior at home, here is what's going to happen. And reading the social story several times before you ever need it, when everything's calm, even before bed or in the morning, or just that could be a scheduled thing that you do as you read through your social stories. Then that will set the stage for understanding. And when they are becoming unsafe, you can pull out that same social story and read it. And oftentimes it will help the individual just make the choice on their own, go to the safe space. Your safe space can be anywhere in your house where other people are not trying to live at the moment. No screen time, ideally. So separate away from others, with lots of calming materials in there. So you can call it different things: a think space, a quiet space. It could be their bedroom, but characteristics should definitely be low stimuli. So no little noise, little light, calming materials like a bean bag, weighted blanket. I just saw those at Walmart earlier in the week for $35. If you don't have one, they're a great investment. Preferred fidgets, little toys that that your child likes, can be kept in a bin there. Calm music to help them come back down. And that could, like water music or any white noise, is even kind of a good thing. It depends on your child, and they'll usually tell you what they like. When the child has been safe and calm for like a period, usually I would say start like at around 1 minute. If they've been safe and calm for a minute, then you would just transition them back to the activity that they left previously to the unsafe behavior, complete the activity, and then continue on with the schedule. So you always want your child to know that unsafe behavior does not get them out of a non-preferred activity, which that's a trap a lot of us parents get into. So some resources for you. There's a schedule app. Some people like schedule apps on their iPads or on their phones. They can be kind of cumbersome sometimes because they're not as quick and easy to change. But a nice one is Kids To-Do List, which is free. It's easy to use. It's in the App Store. You can also just set timers on your phone yourself if that's something, if you have a child that likes to kind of watch the clock, that may be helpful. For writing social stories, let's see, fasdtoolkits.weebly.com. That site is actually really nice. I like it better than the Carol Gray site. It's very easy to follow, has lots of examples. For writing social stories. You can also Google it and come up with a lot of nice options too. Binaural music for sleep. So binaural music is basically music sounds. It's all synthesized mostly, and they are modulated to help the brain waves go into sleep mode. And I can't remember if that's beta or delta. I don't know. But anyway, there's really a science to it. A CD that I really like is called Natural Sleep Inducement by Dan Gibson. You can purchase the CD, or you can get on YouTube, or I think iTunes has it also. But just make sure you do not shuffle the tracks. You want to play the tracks in order because they're geared to kind of downgrade the brainwaves. For nutrition, Healing the New Childhood Epidemics by Dr. Kenneth Bach. You can get that used. The library may also have that if you can get it like through your what's this called, Kim? Through your little device, your ebook.
Your
so
e-reader. Your e-reader.
Taka Now is also a good one. Under menu, look at family resources and then get into diet. And then 2 sensory sites for just little activities that may be fun is Growing a Jeweled Rose and the autism site.greatergood.com. I can't see because I've got transition lenses. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Andi, can you spend a lot of time talking about the role of nutrition? You talked a little bit more about it earlier. Can you talk about the role that it plays with behaviors and sleep and things like that?
Okay. You could do a whole presentation on it. Sugar really stimulates adrenaline and cortisol. And so that can cause behavior to go up and down. And I really see that actually with some kids at school with their lunches. If they bring really sugary from lunches, I can see that within 30 minutes. There's phenol sensitivity. Some kids, so like lots of highly pigmented fruits and vegetables have a lot of phenols. Some kids with ASD have phenol sensitivity, which can cause really up and down spikes in behavior. You can also see, like, I have one kid at school, like one side of his face will get red, this side, and then his ear will get bright red. And he's also a very picky eater. Let's see. Protein is really important to have at every meal, protein and fat, to keep sugar spikes from triggering a cortisol rush. So your body, when your blood sugar drops down, your adrenals send a rush of cortisol, and the cortisol goes into your bloodstream, and then your liver releases sugar. So but cortisol, you don't want cortisol rushing into the system. A lot of my kids who have issues getting up grumpy in the morning just need more meat and protein at night. And that's something I didn't mention in the morning group. but a high protein, high fat snack before bed can really keep blood sugar levels steady through the night and enable them to get up in the day. So a lot of adrenal issues can trigger behavioral things. Also making neurotransmitters. I mean, I just have learned so much about enzyme processes in the body and how magnesium and B vitamins and a balance of minerals enables your cells to do all the amazing things that they're supposed to do. And most of our kids with ASD are dysregulated in that area, which is why they're so susceptible to environmental upset anyway. Their body is just not maintaining stasis. So by doing some things with diet and making sure we're really consistent. And it's super hard when you got a picky kid who only eat goldfish, you know, or I've got one kid, he only eats Cinnamon Toast Crunch, you know, and I mean, he's not well, you know, I feel sorry for him, and he's smart. He's just so trapped in his little body. But things like that take a while to work through. Natural Grocers has free nutritionists on site. You can schedule an appointment and go talk with them. And I've actually been to a couple myself, and they're great. Probably even better than the Children's Mercy nutritionists, actually, because they're looking at a really holistic, centered way of treating the child. And was there something specific, Kim, that I missed
Well,
today?
I was thinking of even some of our families who live in food deserts, and
Yes.
and so it's so hard to have access to maybe some affordable um, good foods. And a lot of time diets have things like, the Takis, the hot chips,
Yes.
a lot of processed foods.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
just thinking of, even though they're fast and convenient and the kids love them, what role digesting those type of processed foods may have on behaviors.
Well, most of our kids with ASD, and I know I'm making a lot of generalizations, but this is really true. And I had a child myself that kind of teetered on the edge of the spectrum for a while. And most of our kids have a really difficult time with detoxification. They have digestive issues, they have detoxification issues, and so they are not able to filter out like herbicides and pesticides that are present. They are not able to regulate a lot of the chemicals, preservatives, like a lot of kids respond to preservatives or dyes. They're very inflammatory to the nervous system, and they wouldn't be if their digestive tracts were really healthy and intact and had a healthy mucus layer on the inside. But most of our kids with ASD have some kind of digestive issue with absorption, or too many proteins are getting through that are not fully digested like they should be. Some parents that I know that have really worked on diet, they'll even add something simple like digestive enzymes to help the kids process food more efficiently, so that can be helpful. But I think one of the best things you can do to start with, especially if you're in a food desert, is try to get some kind of supplement in place. So again, a collagen powder, and those aren't really cheap, but they are really a big bang for the buck. And then some kind of a good vitamin, and they can come in drops, but trying to get the mineral levels up to hopefully help the child start craving better foods, and maybe taste better foods a little bit better. That can be helpful. Movement also, this goes back to kind of the sleep and the movement piece. Like, we are really meant to be creatures, animals that move and are in the sun a lot. So getting out in the morning, and nobody wants to move in the morning in my house, but before you really start any work, trying to just take a 15-minute walk so that morning sunlight can hit the back of your retina. That starts stimulating the whole cascade of neurochemicals and hormones that are needed to help regulate your system, and can really lead to better sleep, which is just a huge piece. So trying to kind of get back to basics, back to nature. Now would be a good time for everybody in your family to try to do that.
Any other questions for Andi? Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
Not only
Jen.
were you here at 10, but now at 6. And so we just thank you for your tips and for your time. And we will make sure that we pass out your presentation for
Okay.
families as a resource afterwards.
Okay. That sounds great. Thank you guys so much for letting me come this evening.
You're welcome anytime, my friend.
Okay. Good luck, everybody. You know what? Reach out. If you're having problems with anything, please reach out to your therapists or your teachers. We really want to help our students, and it's hard to know how to best help each family.
And another thing, Andy, part 1 was tonight's presentation. Part 2, Andy is going to, she's willing to provide one-on-one coaching to families who are struggling and who would like to develop a behavior plan using the 5 strategies that she shared tonight. So if you would like one-on-one coaching, feel free to let me know. You could send a note in the chat window, or even afterwards, I'm going to send a summary out. Just let me know, and we'll schedule time for Andy to work with you on creating a one-on-one behavior coaching plan. And then next week, Andy and the participants will share how things went once they developed and implemented a coaching plan. So want to use this time to help ourselves to have sanity and peace in our own families, but
Yeah.
also to share it with other families as well.
Yes. Yes. We really can learn a lot from each other.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Andy.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay. And so we're going to switch to the resource sharing part. And I tell you, the word is out that Tuesday Talks has really good resources. And so grateful that a lot of community partners have reached out to us to make sure that we have some good information to pass along. I wanted to share that School Smart KC, they just opened applications yesterday for their COVID-19. It's a $2 million fund. And so any schools or nonprofits that serve families in Kansas City Public School District and charter schools who are interested in some funding to support their efforts to work with families, they can apply for the COVID-19 funding. And I have a resource list. It'll have the link. And it's a pretty quick turnaround because, again, everyone's trying to move quickly. So the application opened yesterday. It's due on Saturday. So I will send that out. I'm hoping to do it this evening. If not this evening, this morning, we'll get the resource list. Another cool resource, we spent time last week and even the week before, we were talking about how quickly the quarantine took place and that many students did not have time to clean out their lockers. They went on spring break and they were expected to go back to school after spring break. And of course, they didn't, they were home. And so they left their school supplies and even their assisted communication devices at school. And so while many schools, they deployed Chromebooks to families, one of the things that's missing are iPads. And so if you are a child and you're working on communication, you're relying on that iPad or those touch screen tablets. And so we have reached out to our friends at Missouri Assistive Technology, and they have an iPad on loan program. So families who are interested in having an iPad loaned out to them during COVID-19. I will give you the information of the contact person for you to reach out to. I reached out to him earlier, and he is very excited and welcomes families to reach out to him so that he can get those iPads in your hands. Also, in this week's resource list, we have a couple of special education compliance pieces. So lots of questions about IEPs, what do they look like? And what about related services like occupational therapy and speech therapy? And so there is an article. It's a Q&A from State DESE, and it talks about virtual IEPs. It talks about related services, and it's pretty detailed and in pretty easy to read terms, as easy as it can be for some of our regulatory agencies. And then another special education piece is there is it's an article with 3 different special education experts, everyone from attorneys to advocates, and they're giving their feedback on how schools will administer uh, IEPs and special education supports during COVID-19. So we'll have those 2 articles for you. Also, SchoolSmart is working on family engagement, and next week they will have a convening where the goal is we're bringing in a National Family Education Foundation, the Flamboyant Family Organization, and they are going to work on building family engagement in our urban school districts and our schools. And so they have invited families and anyone who wants to attend to participate in that session. That will be included in your resource list. And then finally, the final piece that I have in this week's resource list is that there will be their daily food distribution sites across the city. And so we will have those lists of everyone from churches to there'll be some pantries and some other places where families can go and get free food during the pandemic. Are there any questions or any other resources that anyone else wants to share? This morning, we did talk a little bit about, last week we were excited that families could take advantage of the opportunity to, as they work with their children on independent living and some other skills, those are typically some skills that personal care attendants or PCAs administer. And so we were hearing that families could apply for those PCA roles. So if you were working with your child on independently brushing his teeth or independently doing laundry, some of those skills that you could be compensated for carrying out those personal care attendant duties. So we announced it last week. We're now hearing that there's some kind of back and forth. So we're waiting on some clarity to make sure that parents or persons 18 and over can serve as PCAs during the COVID-19 challenge. And so once we get some firm feedback, we will of course report back. So those are the pieces of resources that I have this week. Children's Mercy also had some online webinars that they wanted me to pass along. And so I will follow up after this call and give everyone a summary as well as Andy's slides, as well as the community resource list. Any questions or any resources that anyone wants to share? Okay, well, I want to also give you a preview of what is coming in April. So we're hearing that this pandemic, this quarantine is going to last throughout April. And so we wanted to make sure that we provided families some really useful information while we are cooped up. And so tonight, of course, was part 1 for managing challenging behaviors at home during the quarantine. Next week, part 2, Andy will return, and she and the families that she coaches during the week will share how um, how things went. What was it like to develop the plan, and then how has life been at home now that the plan, the behavior plan, is implemented. So tune in next week for the two-part series, the conclusion, and then let me know if you are interested in having your family sign up and for one-on-one coaching with Andi. And then the last 2 weeks of April. Okay, I get this question all the time, and usually it's in hushed tones. Usually people are kind of turning their head to make sure no one's watching. They say, Kim, how have you been able to have the talk with your son? And I'm like, I'm struggling too. And so I reached out to a local disability expert. His name is Dr. Daryl Lang, and he has agreed to give us a presentation on sexuality and disabilities and how to have the talk with your child. And he will give a presentation, but he will also equip families with a script. So every family is going to get a script, so that will be your framework, so that you can have the talk. And you can take the script, you can customize it so that it's, it suits you and it sounds natural for you. And then he is also willing to coach up to 3 families. So if you want to have the talk, you may not want to, but you know you need to have the talk. You can sign up. Dr. Lang will coach you through how to have the talk. And then on the 28th, Dr. Lang and the families that he coached, they will come back and report on how things went. The world did not end, and parents did not keel over with embarrassment. They persevered. They had the talk, and they're going to share their victory stories with us. So that is what the month of April is looking like for us. We want to make sure that when this pandemic is over with, we as a disability community are united. We are better and we are stronger than ever. So if you have suggestions, questions, let me know. And by all means, invite others to join us so that we as a community can grow and just do um, great things throughout this. Before we close, again, any questions, feedback for the good of the order? Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us. We hope you come back next week. I will send out a summary. I'll send out the video. I'll send out a summary, and I'll send out the resource list. And we hope you join us next week and the week after that and the week after that. And we hope that you invite others to join with us. Thank you, everyone, and you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.